Decades of polling show a consistent trend. The vast majority of Americans believe a conspiracy killed President John F. Kennedy. Official federal investigations, however, have consistently reached the same single-shooter model. To understand why, we have to isolate the three distinct spatial nodes of the event: the Texas School Book Depository, the precise route of the presidential limousine, and the rush to Parkland Memorial Hospital. The anchor for this timeline is Abraham Zapruder's 8mm Bell & Howell camera. It captured 26 seconds of footage, but more importantly, it functions as a frame-by-frame data clock that dictates the entire sequence of events. If we bypass the decades of political noise, CIA files, and institutional secrecy, we are left with raw physical, temporal, and spatial data. The records of the Warren Commission and the HSCA reflect the physical boundaries of the site itself. This study treats the assassination as a problem of spatial geometry and weapon mechanics, mapping every theory against the fixed data of the plaza. Two deputies found this weapon on the 6th floor of the depository. It is a 6.5mm Italian Carcano M91/38 bolt-action rifle. This diagram shows the internal mechanics of the Carcano. Because it is a bolt-action rifle, a shooter must physically cycle the bolt to eject a spent casing and chamber a new round. Testing by investigators proved this mechanical action requires an absolute minimum of 2.3 seconds to complete. When we overlay this 2.3-second mechanical limit onto the exact frame rate of the Zapruder film, we create a strict temporal boundary for the shooter. In the footage, President Kennedy and Governor Connally show visible physical reactions to being shot at an interval much shorter than 2.3 seconds. This established a severe mathematical paradox for the Warren Commission. The visual evidence recorded hits on two different men faster than the confirmed murder weapon could fire 2 bullets. This timing constraint forced a choice. Investigators had to either prove the existence of a second shooter firing simultaneously, or find a physical model where a single bullet struck both men within that exact temporal window. The public mocked the resulting explanation as the magic bullet theory. Critics argued that to cause all non-fatal wounds on both men, a single projectile would have to pause in mid-air and zigzag through the vehicle. That assumption relies on a flawed premise: the belief that Kennedy and Connally sat perfectly aligned and at the exact same height in the car. This diagram details the actual spatial geometry of the 1961 Lincoln Continental's custom interior. Governor Connally was not sitting in a standard passenger seat. He occupied a modified jump seat, which positioned his body further inward toward the center line of the car and several inches lower than the president. When you correct the anatomical alignment to match the physical layout of the vehicle, the need for a zigzagging bullet disappears. Instead, a perfectly straight geometric line connects the 6th floor depository window directly through both men. The bullet entered Kennedy's upper back and exited his throat just beneath the larynx. It continued on its straight trajectory, entering Connally's back, shattering his 5th rib, exiting below his right nipple, fracturing his radius bone at the wrist, and finally stopping in his left thigh. While the bullet recovered from Connally's stretcher remained intact, pathologists from the House Select Committee noted significant deformation along its length from striking specific bones. The single bullet theory provides a geometric solution to the temporal conflict between the victim's reactions and the rifle's mechanical reload limit. The primary driver of multiple shooter theories is visual. In frame 313 of the Zapruder film, a fatal shot strikes Kennedy's head, and his body moves violently backward and to the left. This diagram shows the line of sight from the grassy knoll's wooden picket fence. Intuition suggests that Kennedy's backward motion was caused by the physical momentum of a bullet fired from this forward position. The Rockefeller Commission's medical panel attributed this movement to a seizure-like neuromuscular reaction. Catastrophic neurological damage caused his body to violently stiffen and arch, overriding the physical momentum of the bullet. Forensic pathologist Vincent DeMaio testified that the idea of a bullet physically lifting and throwing a human body backward is a cinematic myth. This pathology aligns with the environmental constraints. Out of 178 witnesses, no one saw a shooter behind the picket fence, and a railroad switch tower operator named Lee Bowers, who had an unobstructed view of the only escape route, testified he saw no one fleeing the scene. Initial sensory data and intuitive physics frequently mislead us. When we apply deeper pathology and strict environmental constraints, The apparent anomalies of the grassy knoll theory resolve themselves. Yet, despite this rigid physical evidence, official government bodies did temporarily find grounds to support a conspiracy. In 1979, the House Select Committee on Assassinations published a report concluding there was a high probability that 2 separate gunmen fired at the president in Dealey Plaza. This diagram shows the specific technical artifact that drove their conclusion: an acoustic analysis of a Dallas Police Channel dictabelt recording captured by a microphone stuck open on a police motorcycle. Analysts initially determined that the waveform data captured the impulse of a 4th shot originating precisely from the grassy knoll. Because the committee's conclusion hinged entirely on this single recording, the Justice Department commissioned the National Academy of Sciences to conduct a rigorous re-examination of the audio. The Academy concluded that the acoustic data was entirely unreliable. Crosstalk on the radio channels proved the impulses were recorded after the assassination had already happened. Investigations pivot on the verification of highly technical artifacts. With the collapse of the dictabelt evidence, the Justice Department legally concluded that no persuasive evidence exists to support the theory of a conspiracy. Firmly, we are left with the physical evidence anchoring the lone shooter consensus. Ballistics perfectly matched to the rifle, 3 spent cartridges on the floor, and Lee Harvey Oswald's partial palm print on the barrel at the origin point. Still, there is legitimate reason for public skepticism. The Church Committee later revealed that the CIA and FBI actively withheld information from the Warren Commission regarding other covert operations. The initial autopsy at Bethesda Naval Hospital was rushed and conducted by underqualified doctors, creating permanent gaps and contradictions in the medical record. These institutional failures stand in contrast to the absolute, unchanging rigidity of the physical data left in the plaza. Institutional secrecy and human error created the environment for endless speculation. But when you isolate the raw physical data, the exact time, the spatial geometry, and the ballistics, the pieces lock together to form the unavoidable necessity of a single shooter.